Hello, this is a video version of a staff development presentation called Learning Technology, What's the Fuss? I gave it last week and unfortunately there were only 3 people there. So I've made a video to hopefully reach a larger audience, but this is what actually happened last week, and you can see I filmed myself.
I'll edit bits of this and then sort of put in other bits of my own. In fact, this talk, this presentation, is part of a series of 6.
It's funny really, when I watched the video of me talking about this, I was almost embarrassed by how boring I was. It's much easier to show the 6 sessions that we're running visually. So we've got Educational Technology, What's the Fuss? That's the first one. Video Podcasting 1 and 2 in November. Progressive Assessment Using Technology, PDP and ePortfolio, and Course and Curriculum Design in February. So there's quite a lot there, there's quite a rich programme of stuff to look at. The purpose of today's presentation is to take a very long-term view, a very broad, high-level view. So I've got a high-level sort of Google Earth picture here. And I want to close in from that very high level into the detail. And I want to do that by looking at the sort of broader cultural implications of technology and to look and see how those cultural implications actually affect what we should be thinking about on a day-to-day level. It's a bit of a commonplace to say that human experience has always been a technological affair, but I want to give some concrete examples of how we might think of that. So here's one. It's the last letter of Mary Queen of Scots. Now, speaking purely personally, I know what it feels like to write a letter, and because I know what it feels like to write a letter, I can gain some understanding of what it might have felt like to write this letter. In other words, because I can relate to her writing this, I have a vicarious understanding of how she must have been feeling. Now, in terms of relating vicariously to the use of technology, you can think about those who are familiar with using Facebook, and part of the sort of interaction in Facebook is a vicarious sort of understanding of what it is that people are doing. So we can think what Facebook would look like in 50 years or even 100 years when many of the people who are currently on there are no longer with us. This is a spoof Facebook page called Pension Book, and you can see that people are having fun with the idea that we're all going to get old, but still want to continue our communications in Facebook. And communication really is the common denominator between Mary Queen of Scots' letter and Facebook. Communication is so fundamental to being human, and it underlies all our greatest cultural achievements, from the emergence of art to our engagements with technology more recently, so we have the iPhone, and even to our vicarious appreciation of pop stars and popular culture. And of course, to any institution, communication is fundamental, whether that institution is a university, or whether it's a business or commerce. And in fact, the idea of an institution as a shared body of practice, a shared pattern of communication, goes back to the Middle Ages. So just to recap, I'm talking about a link between the vicarious experience of others using technology, communication, and the organisation of institutions. So as we close in from a high-level perspective on technology to a more practical day-to-day view, we can think what the mechanisms are that link individual action to communication and the organisation of institutions. Here's one perspective from sociology, the relationship between structure and agency, suggested by Roy Basker, Margaret Archer, and to some extent Tony Giddens. The idea is that individual human agency reproduces and transforms social structure, which in turn conditions individual human agency, and that this is something which underlies the relationship between individuals and institutions. Now clearly that process relies on communication for the ability of individuals to reproduce and transform their institutions. But institutions, and perhaps universities particularly, struggle with communication. For example, putting on a staff development session for only 3 people isn't perhaps the most effective communication. This is what happens.
There you go. Where is everyone? I knew there wasn't going to be anyone here.
So creating environments for effective communication seems to be a very important thing that we have to do within the institution. And these environments are physical, obviously, coffee bars, corridors, classrooms, but also we have online environments where people can communicate, discussion forums, video, blogging. In terms of the physical spaces, here's an example of the Student Learning Zone. Much time and effort was spent designing this space in the hope that people would sit and enjoy effective conversations with each other. And the realities of our physical environment are that corridors, or even cloisters in the old universities, are very important places where people pass each other and have conversations. In the online spaces, we now have online social networks like this one, and many universities are investing in similar social networking functionality for internal communication, so that communications between departments, communications of academic schools and services within the university can pool their information and make it more transparent. But all of this communication really serves one purpose, which is to ensure that learners engage in effective learning conversations with each other and with their tutors. And here are some very real challenges, because as learners' lives get more complicated and they have to work and pay a lot of money to study, they will demand increasing flexibility of provision. For institutions, that means providing many ways of accessing learning opportunities. And to meet these expectations, we need to change the way we use technology. But to do that, we really need to change ourselves. We need to change the patterns of practice that we've established for teaching and learning, and to ensure that the administration keeps the institution as flexible as possible. A number of projects in the university have been looking at these issues of flexibility, including the SPLICE project, which is listed there, and the university's new Co-Educate project, which is looking at the broader issue of flexibility within the institution. So now we're closing in on the day-to-day practical challenge of technology. Video, whether it's this sort of video or sticking a camera in a classroom, is the easiest way of making what we do available in many forms, available flexibly to our learners. Our learning environments are evolving to embrace many of the features of the technological environment outside the institution, and the development of new tools and services can give learners much greater control over how they access the services of the university. So we're now down to the practical day-to-day reality of teaching and learning. What does this mean for teachers? Fundamentally, technology vastly increases the palette of activities that we can use for teaching and learning. And because of the demands for increased flexibility of provision, we need to think very carefully about the design of learning activities. And in a sense, this is an opportunity to reappraise the act of teaching as an act of designing activities. So that's it. We're down to the practical realities of teaching and learning. And we've got there through taking a very high-level look at engagement with technology and its relationship to communication, and the relationship between communication and the way institutions organise themselves. This has led to some very practical stuff in terms of what sort of technologies we should be looking at now, and how we should be looking at changing our own practices as teachers. An important next step is the creation of videos like this one, and the next two staff development sessions will focus on those particular skills.